Now, I would like to talk a little bit about uh, why it is that some of us, but not all of us, remember close encounter experiences. Some of you remember them. I would think that some of you, maybe everyone in the room, I mean, the people who come here either have psychic experiences or close encounter experiences. And I want to get back to continue to talk a little bit about Kit and also about Dr. Gary Nolan. And I'm not talking about anything that there isn't public. You can find out easily, Google either of them, and you'll find out everything I've talked about today. They discovered that between two brain formations called the caudate and the putamen, there's a linkage, a kind of white matter linkage. And they have the MRI scans of me and many other close encounter witnesses, and they found that among these people, these linkages were very prominent and very extensive. And that's also true of psychic people, that there's something about this linkage that enables us to see into other levels of reality, including levels in which we are participating, and most people are participating without knowing it. I think, therefore, I don't think contact is unusual. I don't think it's special people that have contact and are selected. I think what's special is some of us have this brain formation. Now, they don't know yet whether the experience induces the brain formation or whether you're born like that. Now, in my own life, and also I might add, childhood trauma that cracks the cosmic egg is a significant factor in people remembering contact. That was shown in a wonderful book called The Omega Project by Dr. Ken Ring, where the only really consistent thing he found among all close encounter witnesses in that group that he studied was that they mostly reported childhood trauma of some kind or another. In my case, it involved a class that took place at Randolph Air Force Base, I believe, in San Antonio. When I was 7 years old, I was brought into the class in, it would have been August of 52. I guess I was 7. So yeah. And in October of that year, my immune system, it was very stressful because it involved the use of what is called a Skinner box, where the child is put into a box and there's an endlessly repeated stuff, to accelerate the learning process. And invented by a psychologist called B.F. Skinner. His daughter committed suicide, and I can certainly understand why. But I have very little memory of it. But I was taken out of the class and ended up at a military hospital, General Hospital in San Antonio, being given shots of gamma globulin, because they had no other way to, my immune system had disappeared completely. My white blood count was almost 0. And I was getting sick time after time. Every time I was near another child, I got sick. So I was isolated and went to the hospital every week to get a gamma globulin shot, and lived at home, stayed at home with no children around me, not even my own sister. And that lasted until after Christmas. And then I went back to school, and I was never in the class again. I don't have any direct memories of the class. I know it existed because one of my dearest friends in the world was recruited for it. And he's 2 years older than me. He was 9, and he remembers being in the living room when the 2 Air Force people, whom his parents knew, they all knew them. They were part of our community. They lived in our area. There's a lot of military people living where we lived, and they recruited him. But when the parents heard Skinner box, they said, "No way, we're not going to put our child in that." in anything like that. My parents apparently didn't know what it was. So uh, uh, that early trauma, the breaking of the cosmic egg, I think is an important factor in the visitors showing up. And let me show you now an image of the brain formation I'm talking about. Okay, here we go. And this is the brain formation. Can someone tell me whether or not you can see it? You can. Okay, good. You can see up here. These two places are the caudate and the putamen, and these striations between are the white matter that grows between them. And this is from an abductee. And in a normal person, you would see this white matter being half that or less, nowhere near as thick. Is it because of the close encounter experience and the trauma that they've experienced that this occurs? Does the brain grow that in order to understand and cope with what's happening? Or are we born like that? We don't know. They don't know because simply we only have a few MRI scans from early on and from more recent, one of which is mine. And in mine, this is present in both scans, from the one from the late 80s when I was trying to figure out whether or not I had a brain tumor before I understood the close encounter experience, and the one taken more recently. So, but of course, since I had this in my life since childhood, no one knows for sure whether or not this is congenital. My instinct is that it is congenital because I just feel, having read so many letters from so many people, that an awful lot of people have this experience, but it's not the simple abduction experience. That's part of it, yes, but it's not that alone. There's more to it, much more to it. It's a much more complex experience. And, Annie had childhood trauma too. Her mama committed suicide when she was 7, and she was alone with her mother when it happened, and she found her. And Annie had very spotty memories of her childhood. I think Annie was deeply involved in this from the beginning, and I think that's probably why we ended up together, because somebody knew we could do two or better than one, and a cord of three strands is not quickly snapped. The third strand is love and kids and the whole future. That's from Ecclesiastes. Annie made a sampler with that phrase on it. That was the symbol, motto of our marriage, she said. So that partnership was, I think, destined. We were two kids living in New York. I was a media planner at an advertising agency, and I was 22 and trying to get girls and going to singles bars, and I didn't know the score, and I don't like to tell lies anyway. So, all the other guys at the singles bars were airline pilots and lawyers and doctors and all kinds of cool things. In other words, they were other media planners lying their heads off, nor getting girls interested in them. I would not do that. I would tell them exactly what I did and the second they heard I was, a low-level advertising guy, not even really an executive, they were going on to the next guy. And I realized I'm not going to get anywhere in this doing this. So I found this thing in the Village Voice called Mind Mates, a little ad. And I sent for I paid my money and got my booklet from them with about a dozen amazingly complicated essays to write and all kinds of multiple choice things. It was much, much more than you would ever have thought possible. So I filled it all out and sent it in. 2 weeks later, there came in the mail a list of names from Mind Mates. Oddly enough, quite a few of the girls had the last names of fish, salmon, trout. And I thought, this is odd. I'll try one of these fish and see if it's real. And it was a nice girl, but we didn't hit it off. I said, no more fish for me. I'll try this other one, Maddox. So I called her up. I walked into the place where she was working. There was this beautiful, beautiful girl. You can see her behind me, sitting there at the reception desk. And I thought, oh my God, I hope Ann Maddox looks something like this girl. And I said, I'm here to see Ann Maddox. And she said, I'm Ann. We were not apart again for more than 2 weeks from that day until the day she left. Sort of left. She's still very much here. Ann is, one time after she passed away, I was looking in the little slit, and to see it, you have to look against a white surface in a bright light. Otherwise, you don't even see it. And I was asking, who are you? And the words came across, it's me, Ann. And I thought, yeah, I knew. Then only later did I find out it had been designed by Constantine Rodabé from the other side. So I knew then that that I was going to have a very good time doing my writing and doing my work, since it was her. Now, the question of why we ended up together is, I think there's a higher level of life. And I think it brought us together because it knew that we would be able to do this together, and that it would not be possible for us to do it at all with anyone else. She was absolutely unique in the world in many respects. Her open-mindedness, her genius. She was a brilliant, brilliant person. Boy, you know, I thought I was smart until I met her. And she had a lot of trouble too with jobs and men, and because in those days men were very, I'm the cock of the walk, I'm the guy. And a girl who was smarter than he was is often not going to work out, fortunately for me, because I wanted a smart girl. And if she was smarter than me, fine, even better, even more fun. So here we are together. As soon as we started getting together, as soon as we moved in together, we started having a lot of weird experiences. The occult was encouraged, or the hidden world was encouraged, because it knew now we had the strength of numbers, we had each other, and it began to show itself in some very strange ways, some of them quite dark, some of them funny, scary, none of them pretty. And this isn't necessarily pretty. If you want to look for angelic only, be careful, because, you know, remember that phrase from Meister Eckhart, that when it seems as if demons are tearing your soul apart, what's really happening is that angels are trying to free you from the cares of life. And when you relax and let this happen, then they turn out not to be demons at all. And this has been very much my life, letting it happen. Anyway, I'll give you a couple of these incidents because they're really sort of darkly funny in a way. The first one I'll mention was something. We used to walk from our house on 55th Street down to and between 8th and 9th Avenue down to Doubleday's bookstore on 5th Avenue, along 55th Street. Because in those days there were still a lot of bookstores, and we were book people, and so we'd go there on Saturday nights. We didn't have any money, so our date would be to go look at the books but not buy them, and then buy a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream and go home and eat it together. Then that was our Saturday night date. Anyway, we would pass this storefront between 8th Avenue and I believe 7th Broadway. And it was a sort of little bay window storefront. And sometimes there was no sign on it or anything. Sometimes there would be a girl sitting in the storefront with her legs crossed on a chair. And Ann and I used to call it the whore store. There was a curtain behind the girl because we couldn't figure out what else it could be. One day we're coming back from double days, probably about 9 o'clock at night. And we noticed the curtain, the chair is on its side and the curtain's flying back and forth. And these little dark blue dwarfs are running in and out from behind the curtain. And there's obviously a guy trying to get out, and you can see him come out and then they drag him back in behind the curtain. We watched this for a couple of seconds and we look at each other and I say, should we call the police? And so we decide we will call the police, but there's no cell phones in those days, so we have to go home. So we hurry up to the apartment and I start to call the police. I say, what am I going to say? And we realize what I'm going to have to say is that there's some dark blue dwarfs trying to kidnap some guy in this whore store down the street. And I thought, well, they're not going to go there. They're coming here, pick me up, take me to Bellevue. So the nut house. So we didn't call the cops. And we never wanted to pass the horse store at night again. I can tell you that. It was a bit scary. The next scary thing was this. But you see, we're seeing into another world. It's not necessarily a pretty world. It's a very strange world. But we have the power of love and of each other. And at some level, that is known. Probably someone who brought us together knows that. And now we're beginning to get initiated. And when you get initiated, you start out small and dark. That's where you start. And it gets bigger and darker and bigger and darker until finally there's nothing left for you to do except face the light. That will be your life. Anyway, the next thing, in those days, there was an incinerator in every building in New York. And our building it was sort of H-shaped with apartments on both ends and apartments across the front and a hallway with 3 staircases on the back and an elevator. And you walk down the hall from our apartment and to open the incinerator and drop your trash in and close it. And I walk down the hall, put the trash in the incinerator, and I notice a funny noise on the floor below as I'm walking. And I stop after I put the trash away and I thrown the trash out, and I hear this whick, whick. So what the heck is that? So I go down the center staircase and I look to my left and the hall is empty. And I look to my right. I saw what looked like a living corpse wearing nothing but a pair of briefs. With its face was more or less skeletonized. The lips were withered back, so you just saw all these teeth, and the eyes were sockets. It was appalling. I mean, it was just appalling. And it's not walking, it's spread-eagled, and it thrusts its pelvis forward to slide along the floor, and that makes the noise that I was hearing. And I think, holy God, a living corpse, I've got to get out of here. And I run away, and as I'm running, I hear it's running fast after me. I run up the stairs in front of our apartment. I get in the apartment, I close the door, and I hear this thud on the door, and then silence. Ann says, "What's going on?" And I say, "There's a living corpse in the building." She says, "Oh, really?" Yeah, I said, "It chased me." We talk about it for a couple of minutes, but we blow it off. You know, we're a couple of kids. We were interested basically in going to bed as soon as possible every night. And so that was just the type of thing that happened. But we were being shown another level of reality and being warned this isn't going to be easy. We later discovered more about the living corpse. When I went into the alley to look because I seemed to me that if he was coming in our direction, he might be living on that floor or on the floor below. And I wanted to look at the windows. And the apartment right below us was all the windows were completely boarded up. And so I called the landlord and I said that there's this weird guy. He said, I know it. Other people have seen him and I can't do anything about it because if I tell rent control that there's a corpse living in my building, they're just going to laugh at me. I said, well, what is it? He said, I have no idea, son. This is New York. And he hung up. So we never found out. Eventually the windows were open and normal people were living there. Sort of end of that story.